Hello everybody, welcome back to another online lesson. This time we're going to be looking at the actions of Gustav Stresemann following the crazy years of 1923. Is this the guy who's going to finally save Germany, bring a bit of stability and a bit of happiness to these Germans after World War One? All right, this is probably quite a useful topic to consider in the interest of Section B. Two clear sides, two clear arguments as to whether or not you think he did a great job. Did he solve the problems or did he not? All right, so hopefully by the end of this online lesson, you'll be able to have that opinion at the end. Okay, so to begin with, for a little starter task, just to remind yourself and do some revision for the previous topic, can you please just pause the video and write down some problems that he's inherited or things that have happened in Germany since 1918, as if you've come in on the first day on the job, and in your in tray are all these problems. You can see how many bullet points there are on the screen there. If you come up with a few more yourself, that's even better. And when you're ready, unpause the video, and then we'll see if you come up with some of the same things as me. Okay, so welcome back. So what problems has the new Weimar Republic so far had to deal with? Firstly, hyperinflation. Hopefully you got that written down. That's quite an obvious problem that Stresemann is going to have to deal with straight into the job. The occupation of the Ruhr. Don't forget the French and Belgian troops are still in the Ruhr because of those missed payments earlier on in 1923. The lack of trust from foreign powers. Remember that Germany is basically hated, none more so than by France and Clemenceau. Remember Clemenceau lost his presidency because the French people didn't think he was harsh enough on Germany after the Treaty of Versailles. The reparation payments are still a huge crippling burden on the German economy and the people. They're just too high, and of course Germany really can't afford to pay them. Maybe you also put that the economy and the infrastructure is also damaged or destroyed in some cases. So infrastructure may be in roads, railways, industry, things like that. Dolchstoss is still hanging on. Remember, a lot of these people, especially on the right, the extreme, but many people in Germany, not just the extreme, still held this feeling of Dolchstoss. They felt they'd been stabbed in the back after World War One. And then finally, for me, we've still got this political violence going on in the Weimar Republic. We've got left and right-wing violence. We've talked about the Spartacus already and the Cat Putsch. There's a lot of violence going on, obviously the Munich Putsch as well in 1923. So hopefully this first little activity has reminded you of where we are in the story. And if you've got some different ones, then even better. But the point is, overall, I think we can see clearly that Stresemann's new job, he's got quite a lot to deal with following the leadership of Ebert. Okay, so Ebert is still around, by the way. He's the president now, but he's sort of given this new role initially to Stresemann, will be the chancellor, and then very quickly he'll become the foreign minister, and we'll see how that plays out in this lesson. Okay, so when we're ready, we'll be able to move on to the next bit of the Stresemann story. So let's have a little think about this source first. Remember in the Germany paper, there is source questions, both the source utility, how useful question, and question one, the inference question. So just pause the video and write down a few ideas about what you think the message of this source is. Okay, so it's a election campaign poster. We've seen them in the general elections in our own country. What is the message you think of this particular party? At this point, for the sake of the task, don't worry too much about who the party is, just what is the message of this thing. And when you're ready and you've written down a few points, unpause the video and then come back and we'll see if we can do this bit together. All right, so welcome back. Hopefully then what you've spotted in this video is that this particular party, whoever it may be, is sort of facing the sun, facing 1924 and leaving 1918 behind it. But also, as you can hopefully see, 1918, we've got some really skinny looking animals. I mean, it's dark for obvious reasons, a dark past, a bit of a blotch on Germany's history, something that's causing pain and suffering in Germany. We can see some bodies maybe drowning or died from the suffering of the first 5 or 6 years after World War One. And you've got this party here with these super strong horses, these steeds, carrying Germany, and we can see the eagle on the trailer, the Weimar Republic eagle, the symbol of democracy and the future. We can see that this particular party is going to take Germany strong into the future, into the light, and take us away from those dark days in the past. So some things like that. We're out of the dark. We're going into the future and leaving the death in the water. The horses leading us to a sunny, bright future, the future being 1924 after this election. The This is a lovely source. You can make lots of inferences about it, but it's also quite obvious in what it's saying. And this is actually from the German National People's Party. All right. So again, it's one of the many parties within the Weimar Republic and the constitution and the proportional representation. All parties going into this 1923 election will be producing this kind of message. All right, so let's have a go at this one then as well. So as always, just pause the video, have a look at the source carefully, write down a few ideas. I actually love this source. It's one of my favorite sources. You can really start to tell a story and see what's going on and make up a few inferences as well. So pause the video, write down a few ideas in your book or wherever you're writing these notes, and then come back to the video and we'll have a little look and see what we come up with together. All right, so welcome back. So what we can basically see here is this party, the Deutsche Demokratische Party, the German Democratic Party, he's a strong man. He's carrying Germany on his shoulders. So the map that he's carrying is obviously the map of Germany, and it's being weighed down and even more heavy with the Treaty of Versailles weighing it down. But yeah, here he is. He's carrying it on his shoulders, and this party is going to carry Germany into a bright future. Similar to the last source, you can see as well, just coming around the corner, there's a sun poking out there, which is indicating a brighter future. You can see what he's stepping on. Some things are in our course, some things are not in our course, but we can see some of the stumbling blocks, some of the issues that Germany has faced since World War One. We can see the cat punch in there at the bottom, the assassinations in there in 1922. We can just sort of see some of the problems that we've dealt with. The invasion of the Ruhr as well. But Germany, this party is strong and it's carrying us forward. It's a rocky road and there are challenges ahead. So this party's not holding back. It's saying to the people, vote for us and we'll get through this together. But it's not going to be easy. This is a thin path, as you can see in the picture, and it's rocky. And it doesn't get any easier by the fact that you can see just to the left of the picture is you've got a communist, we can see that from the star on his jacket, and the Nazi party throwing rocks at Germany, who's struggling on this thin rocky path. These extreme parties on the left and the right are just making it even more difficult. So the cat punch obviously and the Spartacus uprising, you may be able to make out, if you are particularly astute, on the Nazi character, the belt that he's wearing is the old Germany flag, the black, white and red one, the national Germany flag before the Weimar Republic. So the good old days of the Kaiser and Empire. Just to give you a bit of an indication that is who is throwing it, but the swastika on his jacket gives that away as well. So this is what we're talking about here, is this, again, party is asking for your vote to take Germany forward into a brighter future, even though they are facing these challenges together. And round the corner is going to be some good times. So this is from the DDP party, which basically just, they want to carry Germany to freedom and prosperity. The same kind of thing that all parties would offer in a general election. This would be the same in our country as well, in any country in the world where we have elections and democracy. So hopefully you found those two sources quite interesting. Just to give you a bit of a context of 1923, Stresemann's come in, he's taken over, and this is kind of what he's dealing with. So let's have a look at who this guy is really and what his aims were for Germany now that he's won the election, his party's won the election, is he wants to make the political situation in Germany more stable. Obviously, we know there's political violence left and right. Some hate the Weimar Republic, some love it, some aren't too keen, some don't know where they are yet. It's quite a new thing, but it hasn't been very good so far. There's been an awful lot of damage and issues before. He also obviously wants to improve the economy. I think he needs to improve the economy. As long as the economy is bad, remember, we've got the rise of the extreme parties, and the people just are not going to give the Weimar Republic its chance. So that's one of his main priorities to do. He also needs to improve international relations. As we said at the start of this, one of the things he's inherited is that Germany is hated internationally in Europe. They're blamed for the war, all the death and all the damage of World War One. Germany is just in a really weak position internationally as we get into 1923, as well as the problems they've got at home as well. He also somehow needs to turn around this Dolchstoss. He needs to try and make the people realise that the Weimar Republic and democracy can work. He wants to get support for the more moderate parties and reduce the support for the extreme parties. If he can do all this, I mean, I don't know if it's possible. When you look at the state of the country so far, and Ebert has absolutely failed. If he can do all of this, or even some of this, then it might go some way to helping rebuild Germany and building support for the new democracy and Weimar Republic. So let's go through this lesson now, and we'll see exactly what Stresemann does do. And remember, this is in through the eyes of section B. Two interpretations, one interpretation that Stresemann solves the problems, and another interpretation that Stresemann does not solve the problems. So keep that in mind as we go through the lesson. I'll try and present to you positives and negatives at each bit, and then at the end we'll have a little bit of a summary where you can see yourself and decide yourself whether you think Stresemann did or it did not solve the problems. All right, so Super Stresemann, I'll present to you interpretation 1, that Stresemann solves everything. Stresemann is great. He begins a golden age for Germany after the war. The Weimar Republic is stronger than ever, and he solves all the problems. So I'm going to present that to you as if I am a historian, saying interpretation 1, this is what I think happens. Let's see as we go through what you think. All right, so one of the ways that we would be doing this in class, making notes of this little topic, is as a mind map or a summary map or diagram like you can see on the screen. You can do it however you want, but to take these sort of separate elements and make some notes within each one based on what we talk about in this lesson. All right, so since doing this, the spec has changed a little bit, so we don't necessarily need to worry about the Kellogg-Briand Pact anymore. Although that is in this notes, it's not anything really that important, in the sense that it was just another example of Germany being treated as an equal, as a valued partner in European politics. Essentially the same thing as we'll see in the Locarno Treaty. So that's really what that is there. So if you see that and then you don't see it in the lesson, that'll be why. Okay, so if you want to do your notes like this, you can, or just do headings or bullet points or however you want to organize your ideas. But this is essentially going to be a little summary page of all of Stresemann's policies, and then that help us when we revise in next year or in year 11, whenever you're doing this topic, particularly at the end for your GCSEs, a nice simple page with everything all in one place. Okay, so let's start with problem 1 then, the reparations. The thing that's caused most of Germany's economic problems since the end of World War I is the reparations and the Treaty of Versailles, the £6.6 billion that were added on to their debt of already £37 billion. It just caused problems. We know the issues in the country, poverty and the zoos and all the rest of it. So we've got 2 plans that you can see on the screen, both of which are American ideas, American plans. America is going to be a huge part in saving Germany, thanks to the work of Stresemann, who obviously has worked really closely with America. So the Dawes plan and the Young plan, you'll need to know these really, really carefully. And you will do, because they're really good stories and they really help explain why Germany was able to fix itself, or Stresemann was able to fix it. So the solution B in the Dawes and the Young plan, let's first of all look at the Dawes plan. April 1924, so, 1923 is gone, but we're still feeling the effects of that, and we'll see in a minute some of the things Stresemann did to immediately deal with the initial problems of the invasion of the Ruhr, the strikes and things. But for now, Stresemann has organised this Dawes plan in April 1924. So you can see here on the screen there's green and there's red to try hopefully indicate to you good things about the Dawes plan and some bad things about the Dawes plan when we're weighing up this idea about did Stresemann solve the problems. So the most important thing to think about first of all with the reparations is that they have been temporarily reduced to £50 million a year. Now that is still a lot of money for a country that is in a lot of debt and really struggling, particularly as it's not got a good industry and it's not selling at the moment because of the Ruhr. But it's much more manageable. So that will then allow Germany hopefully to then reinvest some of that money that they were having to pay into the Treaty of Versailles debt into the country. So that's been reduced temporarily to just $50 million a year. US banks are going to give loans, so up to $25 billion to the German industry and businesses over the 6-year period, up to 1930 when Stresemann dies. And the Wall Street crash happens. So if you're revising, this is obviously just a little bit of a reminder of that. But for those of you watching this for the first time, there's a little bit of a spoiler of what's going to come later on. But they've got loads of money now flying around Germany that is going to allow them to improve the infrastructure, improve the businesses, and hopefully increase wealth. So this money is then being put into German industries, road, railways and factories. Industrial output doubles by 1929. Before the Wall Street crash, which passes all pre-World War I levels. So it's green and it's absolutely true. This was a masterstroke and really helped Germany recover economically and output-wise. All of these companies that were going bust in 1923, they are now stronger than ever. They're not going bankrupt anymore, which of course helps people with their jobs. And employment and trade and income all goes up, and tax goes up, or income from tax, because more people are working. All right. So not necessarily raising taxes anymore, because we know that we've tried that. We know the German people hate it. So in this case, because income is going up, the government is able to take more tax from that, which then are able to reinvest back into the country. So that's the positives of the Dawes Plan and this money, this loan. Please keep in mind loan. And for those of you that are revising this, if you do the Cold War course, just to keep in mind this bit when we talk about the Marshall Plan. The Marshall Plan was not a loan. It was just money given by America to Europe so that they didn't go communist. They never had to pay that back. Whereas in this one, the Germans will have to pay it back. But Stresemann has taken the gamble and he said, okay, we'll pay that back over time, but it allows us to fix Germany right now. And then hopefully they'll be able to continue with positive relations. So that's the positives of the Dawes Plan. Just make sure you get your head around that and you fill in your notes page. But the negatives of it are obvious, that the extreme parties, especially the Nazis, they are still furious, because what this has essentially done is Germany has agreed to the reparations. They've admitted again that they've agreed to the treaty. They'll take the blame for the war. All the things that have upset the people about the Treaty of Versailles. Although Stresemann has made this deal, people in Germany still feel that Germany should not be paying reparations and should not be blamed for the war. Germany is also now going to be in debt to America. And if America ever do ask for this money back, Germany's going to be in trouble. Now, I've put here ... So that is a little bit of a clue to those of you watching this for the first time. That this is going to be the exact thing that does happen in 1929. And those of you that are revising, ready for the end of year 11, then you will know that is going to be the Wall Street crash, where America do in fact ask for this money back, which Germany doesn't have. And that leads to the whole crisis and the Great Depression. So a little summary diagram, if you want to pause the video and have a look at it, is as simple as we can get for the Dawes Plan. Money goes from USA to Germany. Germany can restore its infrastructure and its businesses, can also pay France. France are happy. France can then pay back America, and America's happy. And we've got this sort of perpetual cycle of improving economic relations and political relations. And also Germany is sort of proven that it's now no longer the enemy of Europe and it can be trusted. So overall, I would say, in an interpretation of the Dawes Plan, that it was very, very successful and really, really did help Germany get better. So then let's think about the Young Plan. So 5 years later, in 1929, by this point, Stresemann is the foreign minister. He wasn't chancellor for long. So obviously his priority is dealing with foreign powers. And we saw that in one of his aims. So the Young Plan has taken that 6.6 billion reparations that obviously a lot of people feel was unfair, particularly as they didn't really feel that they should be blamed for the war, but they added already to the massive debt of 37 billion anyway. So Stresemann has managed to negotiate with the Young Plan to reduce the 6.6 billion down to 2 billion. Now, for me, folks, this is enough to be super Stresemann. What a success. What an achievement. And you almost wonder why Ebert was unable to do this. Perhaps contextually, just after the war when the Treaty of Versailles was signed, Clemenceau obviously was very dominant and very aggressive in the treaty. Maybe times have changed a little bit over the last 5 years or so. However, Germany have managed to reduce the reparations down to 2 billion, which is obviously a massive reduction. They've also been given 60 years to pay this. So that means they can obviously pay a little bit less over time, every month, every year, whatever it might be, but they're going to pay more interest in the end. But the point is it reduces the output here and now. So they're going to be paying this 50 million a year still. That's been allowed to carry on. That's been sort of made permanent until 1988 is when this is scheduled to be finished. So yeah, okay, lower monthly payments, but they're going to pay it for longer and probably as a result pay a little bit more interest. But that is the agreement. And to reduce 6.6 billion down to 2 billion, huge achievement. So economically, hopefully this is clear to you that Stresemann really has saved the day here. All right, so what this means on the ground in Germany, that people are now paying less taxes because the government is more secure, the economy is much more secure, so they can reduce the taxes. That makes everyone happy. They're paying less taxes. That means they can spend more money on goods and things that they need, treat themselves, things like that. There are more jobs. in the country, which also helps the unemployment. Although the unemployment is still a bit of a problem, as you'll see in a minute, it's improving. Of course it is, because now people are reinvesting back into Germany, into businesses, and companies within Germany are also investing into the local communities. The Allied troops have been removed from the Rhineland. All right, so that's great. That's definitely solving the problems of the invasions and having foreign troops in the country. That makes people feel a little bit better. And further support of the Weimar Republic. Stresemann's plan to try and improve the support of the Weimar Republic and remove the extreme parties, it seems to be going quite well so far. But of course, just remember there's always two sides to everything. The extreme parties, they're still angry because they're still paying the reparations that they don't believe that they should be paying. And Germany has now got this debt to 1988. And a famous quote was coined that they're angry because Stresemann is passing on the penalty to the unborn. So basically what that is arguing is that Stresemann's agreed to this young plan, but it's basically putting the debt of that onto your future children and grandchildren, which the right wing, the extreme parties are going to obviously be using that as an attack of the Weimar Republic. So the extreme parties, especially the right, are very angry about this young plan. But most parties and most of Germany, remember we use that word moderate all the time, middle ground, most of them are generally quite pleased with this whole thing. So let's get on to problem number 2 now, or the next thing that Stresemann has to deal with, in no particular order. Obviously, the strikes in the Ruhr is a little bit earlier than the Dawes and Young plan, but we're just looking overall at what Stresemann managed to achieve. So the strikes in the Ruhr, we know what the problem is. The French and Belgian troops, 60,000 of them, invaded because Germany missed their reparations payments. So the solution to that might blow your mind, might just surprise you. The solution to that would be end the strikes. Okay, so that is what Stresemann does, ends the strikes, and this is going to help going forward because the economy is going to improve thanks to the Dawes plan. The workers are making money again, the businesses are making money again, and Germany is making enough things to be able to sell and to trade, and of course foreign countries want to buy these things. So ending the strike is the most important thing that Stresemann might be able to do. You can argue otherwise, other problems might be more important, but end the strike, get people working, get money, get products being made again, then you can start selling them, and then that can hopefully contribute to a stronger economy, especially with the Dawes plan money that's going to come in 1924. All right, so just put these notes down in your, however you're doing it, on the Ruhr, end the strikes, and then hopefully that will then lead to the next big problem, solving hyperinflation, because hyperinflation is only a thing because of the strikes. Remember when Ebert had to keep printing money to pay the workers that he told to go on strike? So once again, the solution might be mind-blowing to you. Stop printing money. And that's what Stresemann does. He stops printing money very, very quickly. He's ended the strikes. Things seem to be improving. Maybe you could argue without the Dawes plan, this is a bit of a gamble and who knows what would have happened. But Stresemann did agree to the Dawes plan, so we'll give him the credit for that. So following the hyperinflation and stop printing money, Stresemann creates a new currency called the Rentenmark in November of 1923. So straight away, pretty much, when he gets into power. Obviously, that's the month of the Munich Putsch as well. So the extreme parties, the right wing, they're not particularly doing themselves any favours by trying to attack the country at the end of such a terrible year. Obviously, the Nazi Party got a lot of support from that, but generally speaking, most of the country are fed up, which is why the Nazi Party didn't get supported like they thought they would. So November, Stresemann creates the Rentenmark, and then after the Dawes plan and the money starts flowing and the economy starts to improving, they then replace that with the Reichsmark in August of 1924. This new currency has full confidence from businesses and abroad. Any money that was left, the old currency was burnt. We basically just started again, a big massive reset, and really probably that does come down to the Dawes plan that's helped that. However, this in the back of people's minds, remember, whilst politically this is all great, people still lost their money. They lost a lot of things during hyperinflation. So this solution doesn't bring their money back. So they're still angry. They'll always have a little seed of anger in their minds. And who knows, in the next couple of years, if that seed of anger might grow into a vote for an extreme party. So that is hyperinflation, problem solved. It's hard, isn't it, so far to maybe argue really that Stresemann does not deserve to be Super Stresemann. Although you might have a few little niggly bits, particularly if you see the point of view of the extreme parties in acknowledging the Treaty of Versailles. So problem solved, hyperinflation sorted, the Ruhr sorted, and the economic issues in the country sorted. So let me get on to our problem 4 now. Another one of Stresemann's aims is trust in Europe. Remember, Germany was hated after World War One. So Germany is not trusted by many countries in Europe. They have caused a lot of damage, of course, the Treaty of Versailles. So Stresemann's solution really is to make treaties with other European countries. If he can somehow make treaties and show European countries that Germany is willing to work with them and not be an aggressor and not be a threat or a danger or a worry, then perhaps that might start improving relations, and that is what he does. And the first thing that Stresemann does, which really does help people relax, I guess, these foreign powers, is he promises that no matter what, he will not challenge the Treaty of Versailles. They agree to it, they signed it. Whether people are happy at home is irrelevant. To the people in Europe, Stresemann is saying, we're not going to challenge it, so trust us. Give us a chance to see if we can work together. And I feel like that was quite a sensible thing to do and quite an important thing to do. And this photograph that you just popped up on the screen there is just Stresemann delivering these speeches in the Reichstag. All right, so the first treaty that Stresemann agrees to in 1925 is the Locarno Treaty. Now, these are sort of obscure names for things, and you might struggle a little bit to remember the name of the treaty, but if you just generally remember the gist of things here, that it's involving the main powers of Europe, but this time, unlike the Treaty of Versailles, Germany is part of the discussions. It's an equal partner, an equal country, and it's having its say in the grand scheme of political decisions that are happening in Europe. So what the point of Locarno was, is Germany agreed to all the borders set out in Versailles. It will never challenge those borders ever again, and especially the border with France, which obviously makes France feel a little bit more safe and comfortable. And the idea is that eventually the Rhineland would become permanently demilitarized. But like we've said, this time Germany's involved in this discussion. So the outcome of this back home is that confidence has grown in the Weimar Republic, in Germany. The moderate parties are all looking at Stresemann thinking, yeah, this is going pretty well. Germany's being respected again. It's being treated as an equal again. This is democracy working well. Those early years, put that down to maybe some teething problems or some post-war issues. So it's pushing out the extreme. The need to listen to the extreme right or left is sort of going away a little bit in Germany because things are going well. So the Locarno Treaty is definitely a good example of that. And as a result of this, Stresemann is given the Nobel Peace Prize in 1926. And I feel like if we think about the relationship in the Versailles Treaty with Clemenceau and Ebert, who'd have thought in just 6-7 years that Germany would be given a peace prize for essentially bringing peace and securing Europe? This really does look, doesn't it, like there's not going to be much chance of another European war with everyone getting on like this. So another big thumbs up to Stresemann, in my opinion, for the Locarno Treaty. And then maybe more important than all of these things would be the idea that Germany is back alive. So pause the video and have a little look at this source. Any chance we can get to practice sources, especially where there are sources on your exam paper, is useful. Pause the video, have a little look at this source, look at the provenance of the source, and just write what you think the message of this source is. Really cool source. Clever again, as all sources generally are. When you're ready, unpause the video and we'll have a little chat and see if you agree or you picked out some of the same things or different things. Okay, welcome back. So hopefully you figured out from this source here this is a gravestone, isn't it? A tomb for Germany after the Treaty of Versailles. In other words, it killed Germany. We know that. We know that's the feeling of it. But we can see the arms coming out of the grave, looking really strong, those hands are. And all the people on top of the grave are essentially Germany's wartime enemies. They're being pushed off because Germany is basically coming back to life. And that is thanks to Stresemann and his efforts. This resurrection of this once great power is coming back. So hopefully you got something along those lines for that source. It's just a really nice little source to have a look at and think about, and it can obviously give us some inferences as well when we're practicing that. The main gist being that Germany is resurrecting itself. Okay, so equal power is lovely, but there's still one group that Germany is not part of and has never been part of and has been a real source of anger politically, is the League of Nations. So in 1926, Germany is allowed to finally join the League of Nations. This was a group of countries, remember, after World War I, where the US President Woodrow Wilson created this League of Nations where they try and talk about their problems to avoid going to war. And everyone with an equal say around this big discussion table in Europe, except Germany was not allowed in it. So people were making decisions, probably about Germany, that didn't involve Germany, which was a real source of this anger and mistrust in Ebert and in the early Weimar Republic and the weaknesses of the Weimar Republic. So now that Germany has officially been granted its place on the League of Nations or in the League of Nations, people at home can maybe start relaxing a little bit, feeling this Weimar Republic really is good, actually. Much better than the old days where we had a dictator in charge, the king, an autocratic ruler. Democracy, we've got to say, everything's going really well. So it's further boosting the confidence in the Weimar Republic. But the extreme party's still there, rabbiting on, yapping on in the background, that this is still a reminder of the Treaty of Versailles. Stresemann has not got rid of the Treaty of Versailles, so until that happens, there's not going to be any support. So a lovely source just to read. Don't have to necessarily work out the message of this source because it's quite obvious. It's a speech from Stresemann who says that once Germany joined, the League is the product of the treaties of 1919. Many disputes have arisen between the League and Germany because of these treaties. I hope that our cooperation with the League will make it easier in future to discuss these questions. So that hopefully to you is really clear that Stresemann acknowledges the need for Germany to be involved in the discussions and for Germany to be treated as an equal, and Germany will cooperate. It just keeps reinforcing to these foreign powers that Germany is not the enemy anymore. They want to work together, and working together will make everyone better and stronger. So that's what source D is about. Okay, so this little task here, again, you can do this wherever you want. If this was in class, you'd have a copy of this and you could just give your score rating on the end. But just pause the video and maybe just write the scores, maybe justify a little bit why you've given those scores. If we say that 1, the solution was terrible, 5, the solution was just incredible, perfect, nothing possible wrong about it. Give each of these things a little bit of a score, the things we've talked about so far, and then overall that might help you come to some sort of idea about whether or not you think Stresemann really is super. Okay, so that is basically a summary of what we've done so far, and hopefully the notes that you've managed to make. There's no point necessarily going through these things because it's your opinion, whether you think hyperinflation was dealt with and dealt with well, whether you think the French occupation of the Ruhr was. Everyone will have slightly different views. Overall, as we know from me, interpretation 1, that Stresemann solved the problems in Germany, I would pretty much give all of these quite high scores, although it's very clear that maybe given any of them 5, as long as there's that extreme idea on the side, the extreme parties, as long as they're there, is it ever really going to be perfect? So maybe you might decide that 5 for any of them is just a bit too high, but maybe a couple of 4s, maybe some 3s. Or maybe if you think economically that everything is so reliant on American money that you can't actually give them credit for it. So maybe it's a 2. Or a 2 or a 3 for you. So think about what you're saying, think about the scores that you're given, and when you're done with that, obviously unpause the video and carry on, and we'll finish off this lesson just with a little look at some of the facts and figures following Stresemann's time. All right, so another little source to think about. This is one, again, you're more likely going to get for a question 1. What do you think we can infer from this source? All right, so you can pause the video now if you want, or we'll just go straight into it just to save a little bit of time for you. The idea here is that hopefully you can see Stresemann is rebuilding a wall, rebuilding Germany. And some of the bricks that we can see are the things we've talked about in this lesson. Friendship in Europe, the new currency, paying the loans. Each brick is basically sorting each of the problems of this broken wall, this damaged wall that perhaps we could work out was maybe knocked down during World War I. And now Stresemann is here trying to build it back. So overall, hopefully a fairly positive looking source, but it does require a little bit of an inference that he is fixing it. He's got his bricks, he's got his mortar, and he's got his trowel, and there he is fixing Germany. And all these bricks represent the things we've talked about so far. This one, a bit of a clue for you. This is more of a negative criticism of Stresemann's policies, supporting interpretation 2 that maybe perhaps he didn't quite solve the problems. So what do you think? Pause the video maybe if you want to have a little go at that, or just we'll go straight into it. Okay, so if you have had a go, maybe you've got some of these things. If not, we've got straight into it. We can see that Stresemann is wallpaper in Germany. So lovely new wallpaper with Germany, nice and strong. But what he's doing is he's essentially papering over the cracks. That's just the term we use when we say we sort of fix things, but we haven't fixed it properly. Because when you paper over the cracks, basically, eventually the paper's going to start to bubble, or it's going to fall off, or the damage underneath the paper is going to start coming through. So the problems that Stresemann is papering over is the Dolchstoss, the treaty, all of those things. He's making it look nice on the surface, but he isn't fixing the problems. They're still there. Dolchstoss is still there. The Treaty of Versailles is still there. The repayments are still there, even though he's wallpapered over the cracks. So more of a negative perspective on Stresemann's issues. And again, this comes down to you and your opinion on whether you think the first source is more correct or this one. Both sources have some validity. It's very clear that Stresemann, although he's solved these problems, they're still there, aren't they? He's just dealing with them rather than maybe fixing them. I don't know, however you want to use an analogy for that. All right, so this interpretation, you can have a go at this, please. So have a read of it. Always good to practice interpretations, especially when we think about the script. Read this interpretation. What is the view of this interpretation about the stability of the Weimar Republic? And remember, our script, you can see that on the screen now. When you're ready, unpause the video and come back. All right, so hopefully you can work out this is pretty positive in that Stresemann has solved many of the problems and there's some stability. You could pick out any one of these sentences, but any of them that are quite positive, obviously apart from the very last one. But overall, I think this interpretation is quite positive. So you might say the view of interpretation 1 about the stability of the Weimar Republic is that Stresemann had solved many of the problems, and then pick out a sentence. I can tell this because it says, as the economy improved, so social conditions stabilized and political violence died down. That's more than enough. That's what we've got. If this was in your exam, interpretation 2 would obviously be the opposite to that. So you'd say, whereas the view of interpretation 2 is that Stresemann had not really solved the stability of the Weimar Republic, because it says, and it'll be something about still anger or distrust or Dolchstoss or something. Hopefully, if you are watching this now, first time, because you missed the lesson, we're getting pretty used to doing these interpretations. But if you are watching this as a revision video, then hopefully that is just second nature to you by now, the script and what you need to do. Okay, so when you're ready, we'll move on to the next little bit and we'll bring a bit of a close to this lesson now. But let's look at this. This to me is the bottom line. This is the judgment of Stresemann's years, if you like. So in May 1924, look at the election results. 50% of the Weimar Republic was moderate parties. That makes more sense, doesn't it? But you can see in May 1924, those extreme parties got 40% of the vote. This is because of the first few years, the hyperinflation, the communists rose, the Nazis rose, and then 10% for the other parties. So sort of maybe not quite extreme either way, but maybe not so moderate either. But then by 1928, so the next general election, look at the results now. 58% of moderate parties have been successful in getting Reichstag seats, and the extreme parties have lost 12% of their vote in just 4 years. So they've gone down to 28% now. And the other parties have got a little bit more of a share of that. So the fact is, and I don't really need you to even infer from this, because it's hopefully really obvious to you, that clearly the Weimar Republic and the people in Germany feel that the new years under Stresemann and the country itself is doing pretty well. So when there is no need for extreme, when times are good, the extreme parties go away. Now, of course, you can say, can't you? You can do anything you want with statistics, that there is still 28% of people voting for extreme parties, and they will always be there. They'll be the ones, the nationalists who are always there, the Freikorps, they'll be there. And they'll obviously be the communists on the left, because every country has extreme parties and extreme political views. But in the main, hopefully we can see there that Stresemann's years, he's achieved what he set out to get more support for the Weimar Republic and the moderate parties and reduce the influence and the strength of the extreme parties. There's a fact right there. That's the election results. There's no real opinion in that. He has managed. And then again, this source is just, again, any chance for us to practice sources is good to build your confidence. But this is from a German journalist in 1929. In comparison with what we expected after Versailles, Germany has raised herself up. It now shoulders the terrific burden of the early years of that peace, the Treaty of Versailles. in a way that we should never have thought possible. In other words, he's given Stresemann a lot of credit here. How has he even done this? The bad feeling of the Versailles Treaty has been conquered. Now, I don't know if that's necessarily a fair thing to say, because we can see that 28% of the country don't believe that. But this is what this journalist is saying, and it could be an interpretation as much as a source, and whether or not you agree with that. But I sort of do agree a little bit that the vast majority of people in the country are maybe getting over this Dolchstoss a little bit, because Stresemann has really improved the situation. So some little political problems just to keep in mind before we finish this lesson and move on to what it was like to live in Stresemann's Germany. Some things to keep in mind. So there are still these nationalists running around opposing Stresemann's policy, accusing him of being too weak because the Treaty of Versailles is still there. So, of course, that will be the mantra. That's the whole purpose of the extreme parties, isn't it? To attack over the things they believe so strongly about. And the Treaty of Versailles is that. The extremist parties have made no secret of their desire to overthrow the Republic. They still want to get the Republic overthrown and bring back maybe the Kaiser or bring back some other form of government. And then this is a bit of a key context change. All right, so quite similar to in the Cold War, the third conference at the start of the Cold War, when Roosevelt has been replaced by Truman and Churchill has been replaced by Attlee. There's a different dynamic now. So in 1925, we've got this new president. So General Hindenburg wins the presidential election. Remember, that's slightly different from the chancellor. So he is the new president. He's very popular. He's a war leader. He's a war hero. He's a very, very, very popular man in Germany. But he has also been quite critical of the Republic. Remember, he's an old school general. He was around in the Kaiser's days, so he's a nationalist, okay? But he has won the presidency. He's replaced Ebert as president, so Ebert can now hopefully go off and retire peacefully. So this idea of them being the November criminals, Hindenburg doesn't have that tag. Hindenburg isn't seen as a November criminal. He isn't seen as one who ended the war. He was fighting in the war and was as shocked as everyone that the war was ended by Ebert. So in that sense, the Weimar Republic has got a little bit more credit now, that somebody that the people generally love and look up to and respect is now its leader. It brings a bit more legitimacy to the Weimar Republic, which is obviously going to help the situation. Hindenburg does hate Hitler, and you'll see that as this story develops, and it comes out a little bit later. But either way, Ebert is gone, and eventually obviously dies. And lots of people were happy about Ebert's death because they have this real stuck-in hatred for him. So politically, maybe a little bit unstable still with the nationalists. The idea that President Hindenburg even asked the Kaiser's permission to be president shows that he still values the Kaiser, is still a thing. So all that in mind, keeping that in mind, everything we've talked about in this lesson, you decide yourself, has Stresemann solved the problems? I think he definitely has. There's a few caveats in there, isn't there, like relying on American money quite significantly. So all things then considered over to you. We're not necessarily going to think about this as doing a section B, but if you are in year 11 preparing for your exams, this would be a perfect one for you to just to think about and try and get an argument of both sides. To help you with that, we'll just put this on the screen for you now. You can see the positives and negatives. You can pause the video and have a look at these yourself. If you're doing this in class, then obviously you'll have a copy of this stuck in your books. But these are your arguments for supporting, if it's the source question, one source that's fairly positive, you pick out some of this as your own knowledge to back up the quote or the content. And if it's the interpretations, section B, and you're looking at your two interpretations at the end in the 20-mark essay, these are again the own knowledge, the bits that you're going to bring in to support how both sides are correct. It just matters what you think, really. So both interpretations, looking at this green and red on this screen, hopefully are valid. You can see how they're both correct. You can listen to one side and the other and you go, okay, that's true and that's true. But overall, what do we think? Okay, so overall, I think Stresemann definitely solved his problems. If this was going to be a 12-marker, the essay, it would be something like explain why Stresemann was able to solve the problems between 1923 and 1929. Bullet point 1 obviously would be the international relations, maybe, so talk about the League of Nations and Locarno in that paragraph. Paragraph 2 might be solving the economy, so you could talk about the Rentenmark and how we ended hyperinflation. And paragraph 3 might be strengthening the Weimar Republic. or your third bullet point could be ending the strikes, whatever it might be. So a really good overall topic that will give you a very, very, very strong chance in an exam. Any question on Stresemann, hopefully, will be one that makes you happy and makes you smile. Okay, so thanks for watching this video. Hopefully it's proved useful for revision, if nothing else, but also if you missed a lesson and you watched it, hopefully that was able to be understood. Of course, if not, let me know, drop us an email or come and see us in class. And anyone else who's watching it, if you want to ask any questions, please feel free. Thank you very much, and we will see you for the next video. Take care, and we'll see you again soon. Goodbye.